All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Nick Anderson. Nick, welcome. So awesome to have you here on the show today, man.
Thanks so much, Kevin. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and you know what? And I just noticed, like over it would be my left shoulder here. There's Christmas gifts over here in the corner of my office pile. I just noticed it. There you go. That's what the boxes are in the corner
Just
over
the
there.
season.
Well, I'll tell you, like I shared with you before we hit the record button, I have really been looking forward to this conversation today. I love doing these interviews, but what's so cool is because in this case, I want to give a shout out to Jeff Rogers because I got connected a while back with Jeff. I interviewed him for the podcast. And, pretty much every entrepreneur that I've ever interviewed for this podcast is an amazing, giving, generous, lead with a heart kind of person, that they're all about contribution and impact. But Jeff is like one of those guys that just totally takes the cake, man. He goes over and above and beyond when it comes to giving. And when he connected you and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? Anybody that Jeff would suggest, Kev, you should interview this person for the podcast. Man, that carries so much weight because of who Jeff is. And of course, what a powerful testament to the power of relationships, which is what this podcast is all about. And so, Nick, I want to welcome you. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you today. And what I'd like to do is just kind of turn it over to you so we can start by having you set a little bit of context for us. Talk about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do. And I know you and Jeff go back a long ways. And so, give us some of the backstory as well.
Happy to. And I'll say it's a blessing to be in partnership with Jeff. I came into One Accord recently as a partner, as an owner, as the CEO. And this is following, like you said, a long relationship that started, more than a decade ago. And at that time in my life, I was a commercial banker and was invited into the One Accord office where I sit today in a networking mixer. So One Accord has hosted networking mixers as long as I've known of this firm, and the firm's been around 20 years. And this is really apropos to the relationship conversation, because this office building is actually a home that's was built in 1924.
Okay.
And in this home, in what was the living room of this home, relationships have been built. Yeah. Hundreds, if not thousands, of relationships have been built by way of just opening the doors and welcoming people in to share story and to share life. That is the man that Jeff Rogers is, the founder of this organization, and that culture that he established continues on today. And so we can point to a few things like the 600 organizations that One Accord has served in its 20 plus years of existence. 150 of those being nonprofit organizations, and 450 being closely held family businesses. Okay. That's really at the core of what we do, is we serve the business owner, the founder, the entrepreneur in three key areas. And if I simplify it down to one word each, it's grow, it's fix, and it's transition. Okay. So grow, fix, transition. The owner of a company that sees an opportunity to grow into a new market or a new product, or to take advantage of some unique positioning that they have, but they don't have the resources, they don't have the people on their team right now to take advantage of this opportunity, would come to us and we would help. We would help by coaching, guiding, providing resources to help them grow. The owner of the company that went through a challenging time, maybe they lost their general manager or their key person, or they've had, Many companies went through a really difficult season through COVID, and how did they come out of it? We will help through coaching and guiding, or even providing resources, people into their organization to help operationally help them fix what may now be broken. And then many business owners are ready for transition. And transition doesn't necessarily mean sell, and it doesn't necessarily mean a generational transition. Sometimes transition just means I'm ready to not work in the business every day. Someone who's been a successful entrepreneur has been working 7 days a week, 9, 12, 15 hours a day on some of those days. And they've enjoyed, some really meaningful success. Maybe they own a home somewhere sunny, but they don't ever get to visit it. Maybe they have grandkids and they'd like to see them more, or maybe they just want to lean more into their golf game or pickleball. So this transition could mean, hey, I'm ready to sell my company in 2 or 3 years. It could mean, hey, I'm ready to pass my company down to my kids. Or it could mean, hey, I'm ready just to step out of the business a little bit more. But in either one of those scenarios, they need some help.
Yeah.
And they would come to us and we would help. And so tying all of those 3 things, grow, fix, or transition, back to how I met Jeff, and even the topic of our conversation of relationships, is I came into this building as a commercial banker, networking, meeting people, wondering how can these folks in this living room help me serve my clients by way of building relationship. And over the years, we just find that people know, like, and trust our company and our brand, and it's because of relationship. It really is. And so we are invited in to help grow, fix, or transition for hundreds of business owners, entrepreneurs, and founders.
Yeah. Wow. That is really powerful stuff. And once again, another testament to the power of relationships, because I'll tell you, I know for me personally, Nick, I have long believed that as an entrepreneur, relationships are the most valuable asset we possess. Everything else stems from that. And, everything that you've said is just reiterating that. And I really love what, for years now. I used to own a publishing company for 12 years before I started doing what I do now, which I've transitioned. I've been doing what I do now for, time flies, over 6 years now, full time.
That's awesome.
And, but even when I had that publishing company, which I started in, I launched it in 2003, but then we really got it going in 2004. But I was always, focused on, okay, I want to build this business in a way that it supports me in being able to be the kind of husband and father that I really want to be. I've got 7 children now and 6 grandkids, and I do get to be the guy, the dad who is there, who goes to sports stuff and to dance stuff and all of that, and I have turned down many opportunities that I could have focused on business and created revenue, but I let it go because it was, even something simple as well, Kev, let's make plans to have that call on Saturday. Well, no, I'm going to have to politely turn that down because that's not happening. Or Kev, let's set up a time to have a conversation this evening around 6 or 7. Well, no, that's not going to work either. And just pull, and I've always been really polite about that. And I'm like, well, that time won't work. So what's the next best time that would work for you?
Yeah.
And it never, there was a time when I had a business where I was working my tail off and long hours. And I remember on a Sunday afternoon, sitting in the office going, what in the heck are you doing here? You wanted a business that would give you freedom, but this is not what you got. You know?
That moment of realization where your head and your heart are not aligned. Maybe
Yeah,
your head is in the work, but your heart is somewhere else. Or maybe your heart is in the work, but your head is somewhere else.
yeah,
And to have that level of self-awareness and know this is not where I'm called to be right now is such a place of anxiety and stress and internal conflict. It's painful.
yeah.
It really is. I'll give you an example of something, just a conversation of a week or two ago. I would say a young couple, and by my measure, early 40s is young, was meeting with me to say, we need to do something with this company. And it's a successful business. It provides a great life for them and their three kids.
Okay.
And so it's by all accounts, they have a beautiful home and nice cars, and their kids go to private school, and they're a loving family, and they showed up together and really a strong family. And the head and the heart were not aligned, because the job was consuming so much time and attention. They wanted something else, and I could just feel into that pain.
Yeah,
And the she says, without saying, she says, I just want my husband back. And he says, without saying, I want to see my kids more. And those experiences are so very real. And that's the real joy of the work that we get to do. Sure, we can deliver financial results. Sure, we can improve the economics of a situation. But when a father gets to be with his children more, when a wife gets to enjoy the real presence of her husband, like real presence, I don't know. For me, there are a few things that are greater
yeah,
than that.
yeah,
You could have $10 million in the bank, and not be present with your family. And I think you've just said that would not be a trade-off worthwhile. For some, it is. It isn't for me.
yeah,
And so I joke. My wife is also an entrepreneur, and so I joke that we only work 9 days a week. Um, that's two days on Monday, and on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Friday we only work 1 8-hour shift, and then Saturday and Sunday, that's for rest and
yeah,
togetherness.
yeah,
Um, People ask the question of work-life balance and all of this, and it really depends. But for me, uh, I I take my children to school, those that aren't driving. We have 4 kids. Um, and I pick them up from school often, not every day, but often.
yeah,
And that allows me to be present. I take my son to jujitsu lessons, and we are there present when our daughter's cheerleading, and I'm with my oldest daughter, and we're going to real estate meetups, and there's a lot of engagement. And the truth is that we work a lot, but right now in this season of our life, we're aligned. Our head and our heart were aligned. And if ever that's out of whack, I just hope I have the wherewithal to ask somebody for help.
yeah, yeah. And that word alignment, you know, that is such a powerful thing, and it's also such a powerful indicator because it's something that we can all feel. We can
Mm,
all feel right now, listening to you, Nick, and just kind of really, if we just sit with it, like, okay, do I feel like I'm in alignment right now in my life? And we
yep.
know. I mean, there ain't no lying to ourselves. We
Yep.
know what we
Yep.
feel. And if we're just completely honest with ourselves, we'll recognize whether we are or whether we are not. And now it's just a matter of making a decision of, like, do I want to do something about this?
Yeah.
And I can tell you from personal experience, from a lot of my life, I was not in alignment, but I didn't realize it. And I didn't have
Yeah.
anybody to explain it to me but once I found out what alignment was, and not only that, what it felt like, it's an amazing experience, because when we are in alignment, things just kind of happen in flow. We don't have to push stuff. We don't have to talk people into doing business with us. We don't have to do any of that. We just get to show up and be us, complete with, our gifts, our unique abilities, our talents, and even those quirks that, that just make us us. Some people might call them or refer to them as faults. I don't think they're faults. I think it's all just part of who we are. We just get to show up with nothing to hide and nothing to prove.
Yeah, the author, I'll get his name wrong, but I would say Paulo Coelho wrote The Alchemist. And the punchline to that book is that when you choose to live your legend, the whole world conspires to make it so. When you choose to live your legend, the whole world conspires to make it so. I was introduced to this book in its the audio version narrated by Jeremy Irons, and probably one of the most entertaining audiobooks I've ever consumed. Next would be The Four Agreements. But back to this, when you choose to live your legend, when you choose to pursue that thing that you were uniquely created for, and a good friend of mine, Dr. Rob McKenna, the creator of the Wild Leaders Toolkit. WILD is an acronym for Whole and Intentional Leader Development. Dr. McKenna would speak about, he has spoken about the purpose and the call, the purpose and the call. Why are you created, and to where are you called? And when a person understands who they are and their unique giftings, as you just described, understands their purpose, and then has awareness to listen for the call, or like the alchemist would say, when you choose to live your legend, when you choose to live out that purpose, the whole world is going to conspire to make it so. This responding to the call, and whether you believe in, a higher power or a God like I do, that call comes from him, that is an alignment that, well, I don't know that anything compares to that. Right? Yeah. I don't know that there's anything like that when you feel in that. Yeah. And certainly, as you've just said, you can feel it when you're out of it. I was introduced to so many of these notions and these ideas at a season in my life when I was lost, when I was disconnected from my purpose and disconnected from myself and not understanding. And I was enjoying a successful life on the outside, but felt incongruent, out of alignment. And you've just shared that you had a similar experience. Here's the important thing is, there were people in my life, there were relationships that I had built that showed me parts of myself that I couldn't see, my blind spots, that introduced me to a new way of thinking that really helped me be able to hear the call, and help me to be able to understand my purpose. And if I just bring it back to our business, our company at One Accord, the most unfortunate conversation that I have is with someone who's coming into the conversation later than they want to. Like, I know I've needed to have this conversation for the last 2 or 3 or 5 years, but I just haven't felt like I'm ready, and now I need to do it. And that's, that's sad, really. If I had one wish for the world, it would be that everybody reached out and asked for help before they needed it.
Yeah. Amen. For sure. Yeah. And I know, sometimes, especially for, a strong-willed guy, that's hard to do, to ask for help,
We're talking with the chief operating officer of a successful company, and he says, we started this company 15 years ago, and we've never asked for help. We know we probably should, but we just haven't done it.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, I feel you. I get you. I've done a lot of things seemingly on my own, right? Without asking for help. Now, I know better than to think that I've ever done anything good on my own. There's always been a cast of characters around me, but to feel alone, I don't know any other way to say it other than that sucks.
It does.
Just
Yeah. Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there in those spaces too. That it gets pretty dark, and and I know, that when I was there, the way out was asking for help,
Yep. Yeah.
and just coming to, getting over, and what was interesting is that, from the people that I did ask for help, which were the people that were closest to me, I was concerned, well, what would they think if they knew this about me?
Oh
And
my
the
gosh.
reality
Yeah.
was, man, they were like, Kev, I am so glad you asked. I would love to help you,
Yeah.
and that was a game changing experience right there,
All
and
right. Yeah.
getting to this place where, I know for me personally, my buddy Jesse says it all the time, I got nothing to hide and nothing to prove. And just what a weight is lifted when we get
Yeah.
to that place where we can just show up that way.
Yeah.
And,
That's a form of freedom, isn't it?
yeah, totally.
And
Totally.
I think to myself, I have to remind myself that which I believe is true about other people may also be true about me.
Yeah, that's right.
And I love to help people. In fact, it may still exist on my LinkedIn profile. It might say that my purpose is to help anyone. Now I use anyone as compared to everyone.
Uh-huh.
There's a qualifier there, and that is that I actually will help anyone that asks for it, that's contributing into their own work and their own help, and if I can, right, I can't possibly help everyone, but I'm a helper. People call and, hey, I've got this question, I need this thing, if I can help, I'm going to help. And yet it's so hard for me to ask for help, right? Like it just is. Even with Ariana, my wife, like she is so loving and caring and supporting, and she'll ask, can I help you with something? I'm like, no, I'm going to do it on my own. Right. I can handle it.
Yeah.
So silly. Why don't I just give her the gift of like participating in my life with me and helping me along the way? And, I think about all of the important decisions in my life right now as a husband, as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a friend. I'm accountable to many people.
Yeah.
I really am. And for me to think that I have to do that on my own, that's sad, because it's just not true.
Yep.
For me to think that I could do that on my own is dangerous.
Yeah.
Because it's just not true.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So yeah, here again, another story. So we are the way that the world is today, just everything economically, demographically, everything is coming to this convergence. There's some notion that, I'll get the number wrong, but $30 trillion in wealth is going to change hands through generation. We know that there's something like one business every day, or it may even be more than that. One company every day in our region here in the Pacific Northwest of the United States is going to change hands. Right?
Wow.
There's just
Wow.
so much of this occurring right now. There's a social media personality. I'm going off on a tangent here. I'll come right back. There's a social media personality, a guy named Alex Hormozy. I happen to be a fan of Alex Hormozy. He has a company called acquisition.com.
Yep.
Hormozy got his start in the gym. He was a gym owner manager. And so he's like the buffest dude with this big beard, and he wears tank tops, and he's like, just a little different. So it works really well on social media. But he's talking to a younger demographic, the 20s and 30-year-olds. And he has this message. He says, you need to buy boring businesses from boomers. Buy boring businesses from boomers, right? And so then I think about the clients that we engage with at One Accord are generally those boomer business owners, right? And I'm like, hey, there's a whole lot of people in the world that want to buy your company, right? This transition thing is going to happen. So all of that is the framing into what I'm going to say, which is our phone in the office here rings every day. Our email box, we get at least one message a day from someone who owns a company that needs help in that grow, fix, or transition.
Okay.
Every day. So there are people that are reaching out for help. I love it when they're reaching out before there's a real big problem, but unfortunately, we often come in after it's farther down the road than it should be. So we're sitting with the second generation of a family business. Two siblings are with us. And one of the siblings is the now president of the company that their father started. And he's literally alone. He's isolated. He doesn't have a network of peers. He doesn't belong to a CEO group. He doesn't have a board of directors or board of advisors. It's just these two siblings, and the one of them is the president of the company. And so even just in our meeting, before we get into any consulting, it's like, hey, let's get you plugged into a CEO peer group. Like, let's start there.
Yeah.
Because you're going through some really difficult times right now, and you don't need to do it alone.
Yeah.
So getting back to helping and that feeling of being alone, it's either sad or it's naive, and both of those things, they shouldn't be. People, I believe, I need people in my life. Other people help me live a better life.
Yeah.
And I think, what's true about others may also be true about me. So maybe I can help other people live a little closer to their legend. Maybe I can be a part of the world that conspires to help people live into their purpose.
Yeah. Well, you've done such an amazing job of just kind of like setting some context. And I imagine that there's some people listening to this going like, man, I need to check out more about what Nick and these guys at One Accord are doing and stuff, and we'll make sure we give them some resources for that. But I want to switch gears just a little bit, and I want to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So, Nick, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story, your experience around this topic of relationship.
Yeah. You ask me the question, and I'm thinking about the man and thinking about the experience, and the hair on my arms is standing up under my sweater.
Wow.
So to give context and some framing here, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back some years. A part of my lived experience is that my biological father, so this is starting to tell some of the story. My birth father was both mentally ill and chemically dependent. My mom asked him to leave when I was 4, and he chose to leave the world when I was 10. He ended his life in suicide. So there's a window of time, this 6 years, and eventually my mother met the man who I called Dad, and they were married when I was 11. But in that 6-year window from 4 to 10, I lived with my mom. And my mother is strong, and she is an entrepreneur, and she's loving and caring, and she's a lot of things. She just wasn't a father. That just is the truth. So I lived for 6 years of my life without a regular, consistent father figure. This led me into, I'll say I used a lot of my lived experience as a young boy as an excuse to make some bad decisions.
Okay.
And yet I found myself walking into a branch of a bank when I was 17 years old, applying for a job and being hired as a bank teller. My first day on the job, I put on a button-up shirt and a tie. And by the way, I worked for 25 years in the banking industry, started at 17, and I say I retired at 42. So it was a great career. It started when I was 17. And on that first day, I walked into the bank branch and I was wearing a uniform. I was wearing a costume, and I got to step into an alter ego. I got to become a persona that I wasn't. Nobody knew who I was. They didn't know my story. And I was recognized by one of the leaders, one of the executives in the bank, a man named Chris Delegans. So here's the guy. Here's one of the first. Chris saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. He saw leadership. Now, if I pause right there and I fast forward to 6 years ago when I'm having coffee with Jeff, my now business partner, he said, "Why are you in banking? You're a leader. You need to be leading. You need to be running a company." So you see, other people can see things in us that we don't necessarily see ourselves. So we go back, and now I'm a teenager. I'm 18 when Chris Delegans says to me, "You're a leader." And he invites me in to a group studying a book called The Leadership Challenge. And we would get together, I think it was once a week, maybe it was once every 2 weeks, to read through chapters of the book, to have a conversation, to work through what it meant to be a leader in the offices of the bank that we all worked at under Chris's executive leadership. And Chris was a leader himself, and he was one of these really big personalities, and he was like a really attractive guy, like personality wise, but also aesthetically. So everybody liked him, right? You know, he's the guy in the room. And I would think to myself, that's what it is to be a leader. You got to be the guy, you got to have the look. But he pulled out of me and out of us the uniqueness of our leadership. Such a profound impact. We watched the movie Dead Poets Society with Robin Williams, you know, and the students in the scene of the movie standing up on top of the table and professing, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," right? We did these things in the room with Chris, and I started to think, I really like this. This guy's giving back to me, pouring into me, paying attention to me, and pulling things out of me that I didn't necessarily know existed. And then Chris was one of the first people to say, and this is when I was young, he would say that the greatest reward in his professional career was the opportunity to pour into us, this group of young leaders. And so let's kind of bring this all together. Here's this guy that I absolutely admire and look up to and want to be like. And he's telling me that the greatest experience in his life is to give back to me and to us. So I think, okay, I'll know that I've arrived when I can start giving back like Chris did. A few years later, Chris was still a mentor, still a leader in my life. And I had enjoyed wonderful success working under his leadership. I was promoted quickly and given awards and things like that. And so I went to Chris and I said, you know, I was working for a big bank at the time, big national bank. That's where he was the executive. I said, "Chris, I want to be a George Bailey kind of banker from the movie It's a Wonderful Life. George Bailey, that community banker. I want to be that kind of a banker." And Chris said to me, "That's wonderful, Nick, and it will never happen here. This company is too big for you to be able to do that. You're going to need to go to a smaller bank. Can I help you?" Imagine that, right? This guy that had poured so much into me said to me, "I got to let you go. I got to let you go over here." Amazing, amazing guy. Changed the course of my life a couple of times. So I left the big bank and I went to the small bank. And I lost my frequent relationship with Chris. Like, I'll still send him a message once a year. I'll send him, "Oh, Captain, my Captain," because I remember that from 25 years ago. But then I met a new mentor, a man named Bill Robinson. And Bill was like Chris, but Bill was different than Chris. Bill was also that attractive personality, that guy, but in a different way. Bill was so authentic, so real. He would know the people that he interacted with. We would have lunch at the same restaurant, and he would know the wait staff and ask how they were doing this quarter in college, how their mom is, she recovering from that treatment. Right? Just an amazing guy. And I'm sitting with Bill, and I said to him, here's what I want to do with my career. And he said back to me, that's not good enough. You need to do more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I said, I have this goal to be here in 5 years. He said, do it in 3. I have this goal to be at this job. He said, no, go for one higher. So he saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. And he encouraged me. Sometimes we use the word challenge, but he encouraged me to go after these things. And then there was the man, Jeff Rogers, who's now my business partner, who said to me, what are you doing working in a bank? You need to be running a company. Neither of us knew at the time that I would be running the company that he started and that I would be his business partner. But those are a few, and there are more. And I would say all of these men, from Chris to Bill to Jeff, one thing that they all have in common is that they love to give back.
Yes. Yeah.
And they influenced me. So guess what I love to do?
Give. Yes.
I love to give back. You bet.
Yeah.
You bet.
Wow. What a beautiful testimony to those 3 guys, to Chris, to Bill, and to Jeff, and just the impact that they've not only had on you, but through you have impacted so many more people. And I just want to thank you, Nick, for taking the time to have this conversation today. And, for anybody listening to this that is thinking like, man, I just really like Nick. I like who he is. I like how Nick shows up. And maybe there's some people that, man, I can totally relate to what they're talking about. And I'm in a spot where, man, I'd really appreciate being able to have a conversation with Nick about some of the things going on in my life and in my business. How could they get a hold of you, Nick? What's the best way for anybody to do that?
My phone number is 206-280-3439. That's the best way. Just about anybody can find me on social media. If you look, like you tried to find me on LinkedIn, there's a lot of Nick Andersons. Put the D in the middle. Our website is One Accord, as it says behind me here, oneaccord.co.
Okay.
Record.co. But my phone rings, I answer it, 206-280-3439.
Awesome. Well, I will make sure we include your number in the show notes with the podcast here and stuff then. Nick, any last thing you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Just the whole notion of relationship is the bedrock, the foundation of how One Accord as a company has grown, is the bedrock foundation of how I have grown as a man, as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a father. Relationship is very meaningful to me and to us. And so I just say that as encouragement back to you, that your focus on relationships is so important. It's very important in the world. So I just want to encourage you to keep going and doing what you're doing, building relationship and introducing people into the world and making connections. I think it's so good. So
Yeah.
good.
Well, I'll tell you, it has been incredibly rewarding and fulfilling, and it just keeps on getting better and better. Yeah, and of course, hosting this podcast for, man, amazing to think that it's been almost 2.5 years. Time just flies. But this
Yes, it
has just
does.
been such an amazing experience. And Nick, I want to thank you again for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you. And man, I'm just excited to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs, because I know how impactful it's going to be. So thanks again, Nick.
Heck yeah. Thank you.